No mumbles, no secret backroom deals. She dropped the news right there on national TV. Caitlin Clark stared down the lens and made it clear. The development phase is officially over. It's all about titles now, nothing less. That single sentence changed the entire vibe in Indiana. What followed wasn't just a plan, it was a cold, calculated execution. Kelly Krauskopf, Amber Cox, and Stephanie White didn't offer empty promises. They offered results. When the market opened, Indiana didn't just watch. They moved like a team ahead of schedule. 4 signatures, 4 answers. Every single move was a surgical strike designed for one goal: winning. At this point, the real question isn't whether Indiana thinks they're contenders, but whether the rest of the league knows they're already losing. Do you actually understand the story behind the league's most massive roster shakeup? Pop quiz. How many major signings happened on day 1? A, 1, B, 2, C, 3, D, 4. Who survives the drama? Let's see if you're paying attention. Mitchell finally gets the respect she earned. Before the new faces arrived, Indiana had to take care of the player who held them together. And honestly, the stakes for this specific deal were way higher than most fans realized. Mitchell re-signed for a 1-year supermax worth $249,244. Mitchell is staying with the Fever. By signing that line, she became the first in team history to land a contract that big under the new rules, joining Aja Wilson as a supermax pioneer. Without this one signature, the rest of their offseason strategy would have fallen apart. Mitchell is the high-octane engine that makes that Clark backcourt actually work. If you lose her, you aren't just losing a bucket getter. You lose the system that made Indiana scary in 2025. But the money has a backstory. Mitchell stuck around during that 5-win season in 2022, when things were beyond brutal. She stayed when the talent on the floor was frankly painful to watch. She survived 4 head coaches in 7 years. 4! That kind of mess usually breaks a player. Mitchell just took the hits and kept showing up to work. Lloyd misses. Clark pushes it. Perfect timing. And Mitchell finishes the play at the rim. She could have forced her way out, and nobody would have blamed her. Others have quit for less. Mitchell chose to stay loyal. Now, nearly a decade later, she's officially the highest-paid player in Indiana Fever history. Want to see if your basketball instincts are actually correct? The answer is D. You keeping up? Drop a comment and prove you know the game. Going into this offseason, the vibe around her situation was genuinely tense. She just grabbed all WNBA honors in 2025, finished 5th in MVP voting, and averaged over 20 points a game. A superstar like that on an expiring contract gets a lot of phone calls very quickly. But those numbers are vital. Indiana used the core tag to block anyone else from talking to her. Absolutely. That is exactly the right move when you're protecting the best guard duo in the entire league. With that tag, Indiana held the power, and Mitchell decided to stay put instead of testing the market. Look closely at that 1-year deal, because it isn't just about this season. Clark and Boston are both coming up for max deals under the new CBA soon, and this short contract gives Indiana the cap space they'll need when those talks start. Mitchell is betting on herself while chasing a ring. That tells you everything about her. That's a player who wants a championship trophy more than she wants a long-term safety net elsewhere. From a pure basketball perspective, this contract looks like an absolute steal. When Mitchell attacks the rim and collapses the defense, she kicks it to Clark in the corner, leaving opponents with no good options. If they load the paint to stop Mitchell, Clark gets a wide-open 3. If they chase Clark, Mitchell has a clear runway to the hoop. Kelsey Mitchell isn't just a sidekick. She's the reason defenders can't breathe when Clark has the ball. During the break, Clark nails a triple off the move. That pin-down play is just pure gold. Talk about a jump. 5 measly wins in 2022 to first-team All-WNBA status by 2025. That supermax for Mitchell, that's not a gift, it's earned. It sends a massive signal to the whole league this winter. Look, the front office is finally saying it out loud. Indiana is officially a place players actually want to be. Free agents are calling them now. The Fever aren't the ones doing the chasing. The vibe has shifted entirely. It went from a locker room people just put up with to a culture players crave. It's a bold thing to proclaim. Plenty of WNBA teams call themselves destinations only to watch their main targets walk away and sign elsewhere. The Fever talked the talk and then immediately backed it up. Mitchell had every reason to walk, yet she chose to stay home. Management nailed the contract, paying her what she's worth while keeping their options open. Watch Mitchell push through the contact and finish. Her speed is lethal, especially in transition. That move alone sent a loud message to every free agent watching. Show up here and we'll treat you right. We'll build the squad around you and give you a real shot. She was the quiet engine behind this overhaul. Indiana knew exactly what they needed the second the final buzzer sounded. Go all in while the window for Caitlin Clark is wide open. Lock down the paint beside Aaliyah Boston and build a bench fast enough for this high-tempo offense that won't fall apart late. This is why bringing in someone like Monique Billings isn't just gossip, it's about fixing the foundation of the team. Last year, the Fever occasionally looked like a powerhouse capable of making a deep postseason run. Clark's vision in transition shifted the defense entirely. Meanwhile, Boston was still that absolute beast in the middle. Sneaky backdoor cut. Boston finds Mitchell for the easy bucket. They've run that play twice now, but honestly, the difference between maybe and scary was always that missing piece at forward next to Aaliyah. They tried different lineups, hoping for more grit and muscle. They had vets like Natasha Howard, but they didn't quite mesh with this new lightning-fast style of play. It wasn't about hustle, it was about fit. This system demands bigs who can sprint the full length every time. Guard the perimeter. They need scorers who won't get in the way. Indiana's power forward isn't a traditional bruiser. They're more like an oversized wing. When Clark hits the gas after a board, look, they were guarding her well for a minute. But that's why you never let her touch it. Clark drains another long-distance bomb, that's 2. She's already up to 10 points. The first big to run the floor decides if they get a quick bucket or have to struggle through a half-court set. Last year, they were often just a step behind. One tiny hesitation is all it takes to go from an easy deuce to facing 5 defenders. Monique Billings? She is practically custom-made for a role like that. She's a mobile forward who loves running the floor, can take a hit at the rim, and doesn't need to hog the ball. For a fast-break team like the Fever, her worth is in how she stretches the floor from rim to rim. Opponents have to honor her speed. Monique Billings checking in. She's just a reliable athlete who goes out there and gets the job done. She's the quiet type. Her movement creates lanes for Clark and leaves Mitchell wide open for those kick-out triples. But the real key? Defensive versatility. Since Boston usually stays home in the paint, the other forward has to be able to switch, rotate, and defend without hacking. Billings is quick and brings tons of energy, making her way more useful than a big who just stands around. Look, the on-court stuff is only part of it. The rest is all about chemistry. These days, knowing your teammates' moves is just as valuable as raw talent. The Fever coaches, with Stephanie White at the helm, are betting big on players who already have a history together. Clark and Mitchell already have that sixth sense for where the other is on the court after playing together so much. Bringing in a forward who already understands that reactive style of play makes the whole transition nearly seamless. Billings isn't just about spacing, she's about making the team talk. If a lineup doesn't have to claw back from rookie mistakes, it actually survives those pressure-filled minutes. This is where Indiana's sales pitch gets really interesting compared to the Liberty or the Valkyries. Both offer big markets, deep rosters, and roles that are already set. New York grabbed it by 5 in overtime. Even Teaspoon can't hide how wild the energy is. But Indiana is dangling a very specific, very rare carrot. A guaranteed starting spot in a machine still being built around 2 massive stars. That matters. In the WNBA today, fit beats depth. Someone like Billings doesn't need to hog the ball to win games. She changes the score simply by making the best players even better. Positioned the right way, she turns boards into fast breaks, Clark's speed into easy layups, and stagnant half-court sets into constant rim pressure. Then there is the financial chess match going on behind the scenes. With a hard salary cap, timing your moves is just as vital as the actual talent you sign. New teams like Golden State spread their money out, while contenders like New York stack it at the top. Indiana's real edge is having those core stars while finding the exact right puzzle pieces to fill the holes. That is the whole damn point of going after a player like Billings. She fires the pass up to Monique Billings, who just knows how to finish at the cup. This isn't star chasing, it's system building. Imagine pairing Clark's insane pace with a forward who sprints every single possession. If she defends clean and understands spacing by heart, this offense becomes a nightmare to try and stop. Defenses can't just double-team Clark anymore without getting absolutely burnt at the rim every single time. That's the big off-season move. It's not just about adding name. It's about making everything run smooth. Tasha Harris is changing the game without making a sound. Usually, these signings come with a megaphone. Official press releases, fancy graphics on Instagram, the whole corporate song and dance. Harris didn't get any of that. Her signing leaked in the most hilariously accidental way possible. Fever GM Amber Cox and coach Austin Kelly posted a workout clip featuring Harris. They tagged it feeling feverish, and anyone with a pulse in the WNBA world knew exactly what was up. You don't fly a player in to work out while the GM watches, unless you're ready to sign. And you sure as hell don't post it with that hashtag unless the ink is basically dry. The news broke itself before the team could, and the internet obviously caught it immediately. Drama aside, the Harris signing fixes a massive headache that Indiana has been dealing with all winter. That backup guard spot needed fixing. Sydney Colson's ACL tear has her sidelined for 2026, and the other backup options have all moved on. Indiana, even without the hype around Caitlin Clark, was on fire going 7-3 over their last 10 games. Whoever takes those minutes can't just be someone holding a clipboard until the starters catch their breath. When Clark heads to the bench, the entire offense cannot just grind to a halt. The bench needs a leader who can run a pick and roll and keep the energy from flatlining. That's a very specific brand of talent that most backup guards in this league just don't possess. Harris cut her teeth with the Sun, easily one of the most disciplined defensive teams in the business. She learned how winners operate from the ground up. Plus, she's a career 40% shooter from deep. At only 27 years old, she isn't just a short-term fix. She plays defense with an edge. She pushes the tempo without being reckless. Analysts call her a Mario Chalmers type, a high-level defender who can steer the ship without turning the game into a chaotic mess. Stephanie White's system rewards exactly that kind of profile. It's for guards who make quick reads, nail corner threes, and refuse to get beat on defense. Harris hits every one of those marks, and she does it without blowing the budget Indiana needs for later. Harris knots the score at 2-all. Next up, Jones and Thomas, though Washington is currently sitting on a 10-1 advantage. Harris grew up right around here. That gives her a level of personal skin in the game you just can't manufacture. This isn't just some bench-warming gig for her. She is coming back home to play for something that actually matters. And just like that, Indiana's bench looks like a unit you'd actually trust in a playoff war, not some group you hide. Just stop and think about what that does for Stephanie White's rotation plans this year. Last season, the second Clark took a seat, the offense just died. No movement. Everything turned into ugly, forced solo shots. Opposing coaches literally timed their scoring runs for when Clark sat, knowing the Fever bench couldn't keep the engine running. That massive weak spot cost the Fever some really winnable basketball games. Putting work in on Joyner, attacks the lane, spins, hits the fadeaway. Too easy. Caitlin Clark just silenced that whole crowd, and man, those bench lulls really hurt them during the playoff pressure. With Harris leading the second unit, White can rotate Clark and Mitchell without the whole system falling off a cliff. Harris keeps the gears grinding. She just makes the right read, time after time, every single trip down the floor. She doesn't play hero ball, and she never disappears. She just gets the job done. That kind of grit is gold. Come May or June, when every playoff bucket feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds, it's everything. Then you have Damiris Dantas, returning to Indiana on a veteran minimum. This move hits way different than the other three. It isn't about hunting for a starring role or chasing a starting spot in the lineup. Dantas is a pro's pro deadly. From deep, prepares like a machine, and knows exactly what a title run looks like from the inside. The Mercury offense has been elite since 2015, but Indiana is the one stealing the show today. Look, there's a real question mark over whether her shooting returns to form after such a rough patch lately. But on a veteran minimum deal, the financial risk for Indiana's cap is basically zero. If she's sharp, she's a floor-spacing veteran who stabilizes the room. If not, the Fever didn't gamble a thing to find out. Honestly, that's just brilliant roster building. You round out the roster with low-risk vets and save your real cash for the superstars who actually change the game. 4 signings in, 4 boxes checked. But the front office isn't done building this championship window. Here's where things get scary for the rest of the league. Those first 4 moves fixed the big, obvious holes. Those were the must-haves, but the names still floating around could launch this team's ceiling into orbit. Let's talk Lexi Hull and Sophie Cunningham, because the word is they are both coming back. Hull's situation is a bit tricky, though, since she is hitting restricted free agency. Basically, Indiana makes an offer and then waits to see if some other team tries to swoop in. If a rival throws out a big number, the Fever have to decide, pay up or let her walk away. Her return isn't a sure thing. The front office has to stay sharp and potentially write a bigger check than they expected. Hull's value is way more than just the box score. She is one of the premier 3-and-D wings around, hitting 40% from downtown over 2 seasons while guarding multiple spots. With serious grit, Lexi Hull drives hard, gets the bucket, plus the foul. She has been locked in on screening defense, the kind of play that makes opponents feel totally rattled. The girl played through black eyes and took elbows to the teeth last year without missing a single game. You can't just replace that toughness. And Cunningham? She showed real offensive spark before that injury in 2025. Her shooting plus Hull's off-ball movement creates a level of wing depth most teams honestly can't touch. She has also been Clark's biggest cheerleader in the press. Defending her teammate with a level of blunt honesty you just don't see in pro sports much anymore. Lose Hull or Cunningham, and Indiana suddenly looks thin at the exact spots where you need two-way killers. That core of Clark, Hull, Owusu, and Cunningham, it's already proven it can win. Breaking that chemistry up would be a disaster, and trust me, the front office knows it. However, 2 specific names could turn this roster from merely great into something historically dangerous: Alana Smith and Azura Stevens. Smith is a Swiss Army knife, guards everyone, hits the deep ball, and switches onto guards without missing a beat. That is exactly the edge Indiana needs when a playoff rival starts hunting for weak links in a tight series. She has been very open about wanting to join the Fever, mentioning that she would really be doing herself a massive disservice by not weighing her options outside of Minnesota, her home last year. Stevens stands 6'6", a post-scoring threat with a defensive reach that most WNBA forwards simply lack. See, she hit 38% from deep on 4.4 tries per game in 2025, while putting up 12.8 points and 8 boards for the Sparks. Here is the real kicker that makes her the missing piece for this Indiana project. She does not need to be the star, the sidekick, or even the third wheel to change the game. That was not her role in Los Angeles either, yet she showed up and delivered every single night. That makes her a nightmare matchup in a system where Clark and Mitchell are already doing the heavy lifting. Stick Stevens beside Boston in that front court? Opposing coaches are basically left guessing their own funeral. Coming back, feels incredible. The love and support here is just overwhelming. Honestly, I am just beyond thrilled. Double team Boston inside and Stevens floats to the perimeter. Close out too hard on her? She fakes. She puts the ball on the floor and attacks with a mini pull-up that defenders cannot touch because of her height. She does all this offensive damage without ever demanding a play call. Defensively, her massive wingspan completely warps every single passing lane on the floor. Stevens did not just talk about it, though. She took it further, posting herself in a Fever jersey on socials. In the world of WNBA free agency, that is not some casual post. That is a player telling the market exactly where her heart is. Imagine the roster if both Smith and Stevens sign. Clark and Mitchell running the backcourt, Boston locking down the paint while Parker has finally found her rhythm. She had sunk 7 straight over her last few games, bringing size and spacing. Smith guarding the perimeter, Stevens owning the post, Harris steering the second unit, Hull and Cunningham rotating wings, with Weddington as the veteran anchor. This is not a team hoping to make the cut. This is a roster built for deep playoff runs. But the cap math? It is genuinely tight. Between Mitchell's supermax, Clark's $528,846 salary, and Boston's contract, you are looking at $3.1 million out of $7 million. That leaves roughly $4 million to fill out the remaining roster. By 2027, the core salaries get way more expensive. This window of opportunity is wide open, but it is closing fast. Every move from here on out is like threading a needle in the dark, and then everything goes silent. No updates, no news, just the suffocating pressure of high expectations settling over Indianapolis like a storm that has not quite hit yet. Caitlin Clark has already made it clear: a championship or it is a failure. That is the standard now, set by Clark and the leadership team led by Kelly Krauskopf. Amber Cox and Stephanie White have already moved with a speed that shifted the league's entire power dynamic. But in a sport decided by tiny margins and late-game fatigue, a quick response does not actually win you trophies. Execution does. What they have built in Indy is no longer just a theory. It is not about potential anymore. It is about chemistry under fire, physical durability, and whether every gear turns when the game slows down and the lights get bright. The regular season does not just reward talent, it has a way of exposing every single flaw. That is where the story really begins. Every move, every adjustment, and every risk this front office took will eventually be measured against one single standard: late season pressure, summer exhaustion, and that final brutal sprint toward the postseason. Some nights they will look untouchable, and others, it will all feel incredibly fragile. As training camp nears and the season looms, Indiana stands at a weird crossroads, half hope and half a cautionary tale. A squad built fast enough to terrify the league, but they still have to prove it. And right in the middle of it is Clark, no longer waiting for permission, just watching as the vision she spoke into existence finally starts to take shape. That one giant unspoken question is still looming, and honestly, it matters so much more right now than ever before. When things finally get real and the season demands grit over hype, will this specific Fever squad actually find a way? Or is this the exact second where the massive gravity of everyone's expectations finally becomes too heavy to carry?